The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Arctic Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN, get a $1,000 bonus credit. And welcome everybody to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday evening, April 26th, roughly 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm also always Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to break down the round of 32 in Madrid. We're going to break down most of the matches on the card. Not all of them, but most of them. Point is, though, should be a fun episode. For that, though, do want to point out once again that we are using a new streaming platform. Feel like the opening there was a lot smoother than it was in previous episodes, so I'm getting the hang of it. But once again, welcome to the podcast, and it is time to first of all recap how we did in the last episode. Unfortunately, one of those episodes where we ended up having a loss for the lock and dog, despite having decent reads on both matches, just did not go our way. But for the actual lock, we had a loss on Papirin, team total over 12.5 at minus 134. Had chances. I think he had 3 set points against Bublik in the second set. He also was up a break in the second set, and he choked it as he ended up losing both sets in a tiebreak. So, or I should say, lost second set in a breaker. So we had some chances there. Once again, he had 3 separate set points to get us basically the auto win, and he ended up losing, which sucks, but it is what it is. So once again, we thought it'd be a close match. Thought Papirin would be able to outlast him, and it did not happen as he lost 6-4, 7-6. For the dog, though, picked up a loss. Pretty similar story with Cerundolo and Felix over 2.5 sets at plus 150. Felix was about minus 450 in the match, and we thought that Cerundolo would keep the match competitive. We thought that he'd hang in there. Problem was he won the damn match in straight sets, which was not, for I'd say, the ideal outcome for us. Felix, though, was really bad at returning. I ended up seeing him break 0 times in the entire match. Felix had a couple breakpoint chances while Cerundolo was serving for the match, choked those away too, and ended up losing 7-6, 6-4. So both matches that we ended up having action on, we needed once again, the favorite to come through, at least for one set. And both times, the underdog won in straight sets, which is pretty annoying. But we picked 2 competitive matches that we were hoping would be competitive. Unfortunately, though, the guys we needed to show up did not, and they lost in straight sets fashion, which was pretty annoying. But either way, picked up a loss there for the lock and the dog picks. Now, getting into the actual recap, though, of the second, there's one match still going on. You have the Paul and Fonseca match, which is deep into the second set right now. But for the other matches that ended up happening, ended up seeing Ruud beat Rinderknecht in straight sets. So Hurkacz lose to Bonzi. Hurkacz really hasn't played much for the last couple of months, and we saw Bonzi look good against him. Cerundolo beat Mayotte, so Comesaña upset Fees. Good win for Comesaña. Thought it'd be close, and you ended up seeing Comesaña win in straight sets. Didn't have that outcome, but still a nice job by him. Cerundolo beat Felix. Bublik beat Papirin. I saw Korda go to 3 against Cena. I saw Mensik beat Quinn 7-6, 6-1. Saw Zverev destroy Agut, not surprised there. Saw Fritz beat O'Connell in straight sets. Ended up seeing Shelton outlast Navone. Classic Navone loss where he was up a set in the break. Then, of course, he's not a great server. He blew it, and then Shelton eventually did take control of the third set. So either way, nice job by Shelton to bounce back as he was down a set in the break, and he ended up surviving as Navone was serving for the match. Saw Monfils no-show, so Rublev got a walkover. Fekina beat Borges, and saw Rune drop out after Rune ended up winning the title last week. Question is overall fitness, and Rune ended up no-showing. So either way, point is not exactly a surprise to me that Rune ended up retiring, but definitely a classic tale of pretty much Rune's career up to this point. So moving on to the matches from Saturday. So Shapo beat Nishikori. Saw DeZumer beat Baez. Kind of a shock there, especially based on 6-1 for the first set in favor of Baez. Thought he'd roll, and then DeZumer ended up only dropping 3 games in the last 2 sets combined. So Musetti beat Echeverry in straight sets, and Nori ended up beating Leheshka with a bagel in the final set. De Minaur beat Sonego in straight sets. Diallo beat Diallo won, so once again, as a lucky loser, was able to get into the third round, so good for him, as he ended up outlasting the opponent in a pretty competitive 3-setter. But nice job by Diallo. Saw Tsitsipas beat Struff in 3. Saw Fernley beat Makic in 3. I actually like Fernley's game quite a bit. Saw Rinaldi beat Djokovic. That was the main storyline of the day on Saturday. Joker loses back-to-back matches in straight sets on clay to Tabilo and to Arnaldi. Not looking good for the GOAT. Definitely not looking good at all. I know that clay has never been his favorite surface. I think that technically it's his least favorite because grass and hard court are so much better in terms of titles for him. Not a bad clay player, but Joker does not look good at all, and Arnaldi was able to beat him, so good win for him there. I ended up seeing Dimitrov beat Jari. What else is new in straight sets? Muller beat Humbert in a final set breaker. Saw Berrettini beat Giron in 3. Weird match there, as Berrettini was battling an injury midway through. Giron did win the first set in a tiebreak, and then he ended up losing the second set in a breaker, and then Berrettini took an injury timeout. Pretty interesting gamesmanship that happened at the end of that second set, because Giron took a toilet break for about 5 minutes because he wanted to change momentum. So Giron came back, and the second Giron came back to the court, Berrettini took an injury timeout. So he waited for Giron to come back, and then he immediately stalled again after Giron's stalling tactic ended. So I do like that kind of gamesmanship, and it worked itself out as Berrettini got to get some work done on his abdomen, dash his hip, and he was able to dominate the third set against Giron. He looked worse in terms of the firepower, but Giron mentally checked out, and you saw Berrettini win 6-1 in the final set. So nice comeback win there by Berrettini. Didn't think he looked that great, but still a nice win nonetheless. Saw Draper beat Griekspoor in straight sets. Draper's been pretty quiet since winning Indian Wells. He looked good, though, against Griekspoor on Saturday. Saw Tiafoe beat Darderi in a set and a half as Darderi retired. Did like Tiafoe to get the job done in that one. Saw Khachanov beat Opelka with no breaks in the entire match. Not a shock there as he won 7-6, 7-6. Believe Khachanov faced 0 break points. Opelka, when it was not a great, of course, returner, solid server, and you had a serve fest the entire match through. But as of right now, Paul is up a mini break here in the tie break in the second set of the Fonseca match. But right now, it looks like each of the last 2 matches on the Saturday card will only feature breakers, and we'll see if Paul's able to win. Fonseca was favored in that match, so we'll see what happens here. But Paul, it would be a nice win for him, despite being a lot higher in the rankings than Fonseca. I think we all know Fonseca will eventually be a top 15, top 10 player in the world. So nice job by Paul so far. We'll see if he blows it. We know Paul tends to blow some matches in the past, but either way, a point is definitely looking forward to seeing how that match shapes up. I see Cayetano. Fun fact, by the way, Cayetano reached out to me on Twitter asking if I knew the price of a pound of trout. No context. We're talking about Shedeur Sanders, and he immediately segued to asking my thoughts on fish prices. I don't know the answer to your question, Cayetano, so I'm rooting for you. I hope you find a solid deal for you on the fish, but I don't know the answer to your question, so apologies there. A reminder, though, I'm also on Twitter at Reichel Radio, so if you don't have any questions for me, you can ask, and I could potentially give you an answer or give you a brief I don't know. But a reminder that you can find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. So once again, don't forget to reach out on Twitter if you do enjoy the show or if you want some questions on some matches that I did not cover. But a reminder, for the actual network, it also help the show grow. It's written down below, but you can like, subscribe, and YouTube reminder. Just leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So once again, help the podcast grow by leaving a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. I think we're at 910 for subscribers, trying to get to 1K by the end of May. So hopefully help us get there. Would be a nice milestone for us. And a reminder, you could also check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Camp Podcast merch with sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable, different colors. I don't believe we have the tennis ball that's on the merch store. That might be a custom thing for me. But we have the helmet. So if you want a small SGPN helmet, we got you covered there. So once again, check that out on the merch store as well. Plus, a reminder, you can also check out all of the picks and podcasts on the platform with the SGPN app, which is free to download. So don't forget to download the SGPN app on the App Store if you do want to get easier access to all of the podcasts and all of the picks. Trying to see if this Paul match is going to end. He has 3 match points, but it's Tommy Paul we're talking about, so you never know if that's actually safe or not. But it seems like a very fun match so far, as it looks like we should be getting a final 7-6, 7-6, but still Paul did a good job so far. So, once again, I don't want to jinx everything. Fonseca, though, has had a ton of breakpoint chances, and he squandered pretty much all of them. Paul had to fight off, so Paul just won. Fonseca, the breakpoint comparison. Fonseca faced 1 breakpoint in the entire match. Tommy Paul faced 13, and Paul won in straight sets. 13-1. Ouch. Paul was able to successfully fight off 12 of the 13 breakpoint chances, and he was able to win in straight sets. So nice job by Paul getting the job done. And once again, Fonseca, as a pretty decent favorite in that match, falls short, but definitely a fun way to end the tennis card for the round of 64. Anyway, moving on to the matches here in the third round, or in other words, the round of once again 32 here in Madrid. Before we get into the actual preview of the matches, though, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, EdgeBoost, because they are the first bank account built for bettors, ensuring that all gambling transactions are approved, no usage fees, no imbalance. You can also get cash rewards, 100% approval for all betting deposits. Sign up today at edgeboost.bet, pro SGPN, deposit $25, and EdgeBoost will match the deposit. So free $25, no questions asked. That's edgeboost.bet, pro code SGPN. We're also brought to you by MyBookie, because MyBookie.ag is placed in every sport. They have the NBA playoffs, they have the NHL playoffs, they have MLB, they have tennis, they have everything you want. Once again, on one easy offshore platform. Check out MyBookie to bet on all the sporting events and the props for every game. They also accept customers on locations. You can also use crypto for your link fast payouts and deposits. Once again, a reminder, head to MyBookie.ag, pro code SGPN for a 100% odds match up to 1K. Terms and conditions apply. MyBookie.ag, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish recapping what happened in the second round. Time to move on into the round of 32. Starting off with the first match on the card, we'll look at Bublik against Rublev. Not the match I think we expected to see in the third round here in Madrid, but Bublik's been good so far, and Rublev had a walkover against Monfils, so we'll see how he looks, but decent favorite here as Bublik's around minus 320. Rublev's minus 320, Bublik is plus 260. For the spread, you minus 3.5 for Rublev, plus 3.5 for Bublik. The over-under's at 22.5. Now, for the actual set spread here, you have Rublev in straight sets at minus 110. Bublik to win a set at minus 120. The over 2.5 sets is a plus 150. Now, for the matchup, they faced off about 8 times in the past, and you have seen a lot of success in favor of, I'd say, Rublev, because the most recent win Bublik had was in Dubai, which was the infamous ejection that Rublev had for cursing out a line judge, and he ended up having to retire because of court abuse or whatever you want to call it. So that was when the Rublev temper tantrum came to a full, I'd say, news story. But either way, that was the last time Bublik beat him. That was last year in Dubai. Rublev, though, beat him this year in Doha, and we saw Rublev beat Bublik in the crazy Wimbledon match. That was a 5-setter back in 2023. They've had 0 clay meetings, though, in the past, so can't really use that as a frame of reference. But point is, Rublev, we know, is better on clay than Bublik is. However, the court speeds in Madrid have definitely helped Bublik out because he's won all 4 sets here, and 3 of those 4 sets were tie breaks. So we've seen a lot of longer sets. We've seen a lot of good serving. The question is, will Bublik keep his, I'd say, emotions intact? And will Rublev keep his emotions intact? So bit of a head case bowl here. We'll see who wins. I think Rublev should be favored. Do I think he's going to dominate? No, I really don't. I think Bublik's been good, and I think Bublik can maybe win a set here. Rublev's been fine on clay, not too great. In Monte Carlo, did beat Monfils, then ended up losing to Fils comfortably, beat De Jong in Barcelona, then lost to Fekina in straight sets. They ended up getting a walkover win against Monfils. So Bublik's played 2 matches in Madrid, so he should be more familiar with the court speed. I think Bublik will look pretty sharp early. I don't mind the team total over for Rublev in this one, though. I think Rublev's going to win. It wouldn't shock me if it went to 3 sets, but I see at least 1 breaker, so I don't mind the team total over for Rublev trying to cut into the juice. But I think you're looking at a minus 320 price being a bit steep for me. I think there's value on the over at 22.5. So I'll go with the over, and I'll go with the team total over for Rublev in this one. I think Bublik, though, can maybe win it, but I think Rublev will outlast him. Give me Rublev in a marathon. Moving on to the next match, looking at the matchup between Zverev and Fekina. We're going to jump around a little bit. So for this one, Zverev is a decent favorite. He's around minus 260. For Fekina, I see around plus 215. For the spread, minus 3.5 for Zverev, plus 3.5 for Fekina. The over-under for games at 22.5. For the over-under in sets, I see 2.5 at plus 140 on the over. Zverev in straight sets, plus 100, and Fekina to win a set is minus 130. Now, Fekina's been very good lately. We saw him make the semis in, once again, Monte Carlo before losing to Alcaraz. Then we saw him lose in his third match in Barcelona. Did beat Rublev, though, and beat Wawrinka, and then he ended up beating Borges comfortably here in Madrid. However, Zverev has been playing well. We saw him win a title in Munich, only dropped 1 set the entire event. Then beat Agut, who I think is basically washed at this point, so definitely a good win just based on margin, but not really a great opponent. In the head-to-head, though, it has been interesting because Zverev's been mostly dominant as he has won 4 of the 5 meetings. In fact, all 4 wins 3 of the 4 wins were in straight sets. However, we saw Fekina beat Zverev in Toronto in straight sets, 6-1, 6-2, 2023. Faced off that same year later on, and you saw Zverev beat Fekina in 3 sets in Beijing. So they faced off 5 times. 4 of the meetings were on hard court. 1 of them was in the French Open 2021, and Zverev won in straight sets. That was about 4 years ago. Can't really use it. So the question is, am I picking Fekina to win a set here? He's been good. I recognize it. But I think based on value, I think Zverev wins in straight sets. You can argue maybe if you want to go for a team total over again, you can for Zverev, because that kind of gives you a little bit of a hedge there. If Fekina is able to keep one set very competitive, and if he wins a set, you can still win that with Zverev. But I think Zverev's better, and I do think that Fekina, despite playing well, Zverev finally seems to be back under control where it comes to living up to the potential what we saw last year in the clay state, making the French Open final. It seems like he's finally gotten his groove back after the Australian Open. And based on that, I think Zverev's the better player. You might get at least one competitive set here, but Zverev's the better server, then that'll be a factor. Give me Zverev in straight sets here at even money if I had to go for something for value in that match. Moving on to the next matchup. We are going to jump around a little bit because the matches for the rest of the Sunday card are not that great, but we are going to look at the matchup between... You know what? We'll go with Korda against Ruud. So for this one, Ruud's decent favorite as Ruud is around minus 205. Korda's plus 177 or so. For the spread, minus 3 for Ruud, plus 3 for Korda. The over-under in games at 22.5. For the set spread, you have Ruud in straight sets at plus 125. You have Korda to win a set at minus 155. The over 2.5 sets is a plus 130. Now, for the actual, I'd say, matchup here, Ruud and Korda have never played against each other. They were supposed to in Montreal last year, and Ruud ended up retiring. So Korda got a walkover, so can't really use that for anything. Ruud, though, I thought looked good against Rinderknecht. I don't think Rinderknecht is that good, but still a straight set win nonetheless. But in Barcelona, I thought he was fine. Beat Galan in straight sets, beat Medjedovic in a competitive straight sets, and ended up losing to Rune, which aged well because Rune did win the entire tournament. So for Korda, he's looked fine. Ended up beating Sina, who was a relatively young up-and-comer Italian. We actually backed as part of the dog play a couple episodes ago. But the point is, Sina was a massive dog. Korda was a massive favorite, and he dropped a set. So Korda has not looked that great on clay. We saw him beat Arnaldi in Barcelona. They ended up losing to Tsitsipas in a competitive straight sets. I think Ruud should beat him in straight sets. I get the argument is Korda is playing pretty well, and it seems like he's healthy again for once. As for Ruud, we know that he's been very up and down for the last couple years, but based on familiarity on clay and based on clay talent, I think Ruud should be a bigger favorite in this matchup. Korda, I think, is fine. But once again, Ruud, I just think, looked pretty sharp in his last match. He's had a weak competition recently that he's beaten, still been winning in straight sets, and losing to Rune aged pretty well. So besides that, he ended up beating Agut 6-2, 6-1 in Monte Carlo. We saw him choke away a win against Pirate, where he was up a break. I think he was up a couple match points, actually, as well, in that third set. So the point is, he's been, performing decently. He's had a couple of flare-ups in a negative way. But I do think when it comes to overall upside, he's clearly better than Korda. I like the price. I think that getting Ruud in straight sets at around plus 130 on his favorite surface, plus 125, is a great price for me. I'll go with that as my main option for that match. Moving on to the actual matches on Monday. So for this one, you have Norrie taking on Diallo. Now, Norrie's minus 160. Diallo's plus 130. Diallo, I said before, shouldn't have been here. He ended up being a last-second fill-in for, I believe it was Nishioka who he filled in for. Point is, though, he beat Berg 6-1, 6-2, and he ended up beating Majchik in 3 sets there in the match on Saturday. Great server. It's why he's been performing well here because the court speeds in Madrid are fast. Not the greatest clay player overall, but a good serve. As for Norrie, he's had a couple of marathons. In fact, he's gone to a deciding set in 3 straight. Beat Leheshka in 3, beat Landalucci in 3, and ended up losing to Kashanov in 3 sets in Barcelona after going through qualifying. So point is, Norrie's been fine, had a couple marathon matches, and I think that Diallo is good enough to win a breaker just based on the serve. I'll go with the over 2.5 sets here, whatever price that's going to be. I think it'll be close. I'll back the Norrie marathon trend here, and Norrie, I think, will once again have a set where he kind of no-shows it, then he'll bounce back, and I see that culminating in what I think should be a Norrie win in 3. But I think that Diallo's been playing well, and I do think his serve is very dangerous on the courts here in Madrid. So I will go with the over 2.5 sets as my thoughts for that match. Moving on to the matchup between Tiafoe and Muller. So Muller had a nice 3-set marathon win against Humbert. Tiafoe had a nice win, a set and a half against Darderi. And for the actual, once again, pricing here, you have Tiafoe minus 125. You have Muller at plus 100. Faced off one time before, actually earlier this year in Acapulco, and Tiafoe did win 6-4, 6-2. I believe that was right after Muller made the final, where he lost to, I want to say it was in Rio to Baez, but I'm trying to remember if it was Rio or not. I think it was Rio. So the point is, you saw Mueller have an immediate turnaround after making the final, and it just seemed like he was out of gas. So I can't really use that as a comp, or at least as a noteworthy head-to-head history takeaway, because I think Mueller was just in a really bad spot for that match. Now, for Mueller, he's won a couple marathons, beat Goffin in basically 2+ sets as Goffin retired. Then he beat Humbert in a final set tiebreak on Saturday. For Tiafoe, once again, he had a bye in the first round, then they're beating Darderi in the second round in 1.5 sets. I think that Mueller is definitely better on clay, at least based on form this year. However, I do think it's a good spot for Tiafoe because once again, Mueller had a marathon on Saturday, and Tiafoe played a set and a half, and I thought he looked pretty good. We know that Darderi just won a clay title a couple weeks ago, so I do like the form there from Tiafoe. But the Mueller match was 2.5 hours. Not the easiest turnaround for him. And you're looking at Tiafoe, who played significantly less time than that in the matchup that he had on Saturday against Darderi. So based on the overall, I'd say, schedule for both guys, I think that Tiafoe's got a pretty decent path. And I do think that Tiafoe's got a pretty decent, once again, schedule for him because his match was only 1 hour and 7. So you're looking at Mueller, who played 1.5 more hours of tennis yesterday. Fatigue could be a problem. Not a great server. Tiafoe is the better server. I'll go with Tiafoe. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I do think that getting a -125 price for a pretty solid scheduling spot is appealing to me. So I'll go with Tiafoe as the small favorite in that one. Moving on to the next matchup. You have a matchup between Khachanov and Paul. Now, this match just ended for Paul, so I have no lines available, but I'll still talk about it. So for this one, in the head-to-head history, they faced off one time, faced off in Miami about 3 years ago. Paul won in 3 sets. Can I use that as a takeaway? No, not even close. Paul, though, nice win against Fonseca. Problem was, I said before, he ended up facing about 13 breakpoint chances. He fought off 12 of them. But the point is, even though he won in straight sets, you could argue that was a bit misleading because Fonseca only had to face 1 breakpoint. So Paul did not do a great job returning, and he won anyway. So nice job by him. Khachanov, though, looked very good in his match against Opelka. Faced 0, once again, 0 breakpoints. I understand Opelka's not a great clay player, but the point is his serve's been looking good. Paul's return game was not very good against Fonseca. Think Khachanov should be favored in this one slightly. I'll go with him in this one, though. I think his serve is better than Paul's, and I do think that Paul will not be as fortunate to fight off that many breakpoints against Khachanov. I'll go with him in this one at what I think should be a pretty small price. Moving on to the final match we're going to talk about between Tsitsipas and Musetti. Rematch of the fun Monte Carlo match, which we saw Musetti finally exercise the demons as he was able to beat Tsitsipas for the first time. Tsitsipas, before that match about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, was 5-0 lifetime. And then we finally saw Musetti beat him. Saw Tsitsipas win the first set 6-1, then he kind of fell apart. Now, he was in a bit of a marathon against Struff in the match today, was able to come back from a drop in the first set as he won in 3. For Musetti, looked good against Echeverry as he won 7-6, 6-2. We saw him make a deep run to Monte Carlo, skipped Barcelona, and then we saw him look pretty good against Echeverry in the first match here. For the pricing, Musetti is actually favored in the match. Musetti is around -125. You have Tsitsipas at around even money. And I think for this one, I like the over 2.5 sets. I took the team total for the matchup there for Tsitsipas in the last meeting. I think you could argue that that's the same approach for this one, as even though Tsitsipas is currently 5-1 a lifetime against Musetti, every meeting, by the way, besides the first one, was on clay. So each of the last 5 meetings were on clay. And the fact remains, Tsitsipas has gone over his team total in every one of those meetings. And I do think you're looking at what should be a close battle. I will point out that 4 of the 5 clay meetings were not in straight sets. So I do see a marathon here. I think Musetti might be the, in my opinion, wrong person favored. I understand that Tsitsipas didn't look that great against Struff in the first round here. But the fact is he's on the head-to-head on clay. And Musetti, despite winning against Tsitsipas about 2 weeks ago, was still down a set, and he also was down a couple breakpoints, I believe, in the third set. So the point is Tsitsipas still did not play badly. He did lose to Musetti, but I find it weird that he's currently 5-1 lifetime on clay, and yet with that being the case, he is still a dog in this match, or I should say that he's 4-1 lifetime on clay. I just don't think the right guy's favored here. I understand that you could argue Musetti's the better player right now based on form, but I think head-to-head matters, and I do think that Tsitsipas will look pretty sharp here. Give me the over for this one. I see a war if I had to go for any prediction on that match. Anyway, time to move on to the actual lock and dog plays for the round of 32. For that, though, a reminder. that we are brought to you by our sponsor, Arctic Fantasy. You can play there on a pick'em for a chance of 100 times your money. It also makes a match for sports. You can use the MLB, you could use the NBA, you could use the NHL, tennis, you could use esports, MMA. You can do whatever you want for your entries. But a reminder, you can mix and match if you want to. But you can also you can win up to 100 times your money, which is definitely a nice deal there. Sign up though with the promo code SGPN when you do sign up for your new account. So promo code SGPN for a special rate first time that offer up to 1K bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to by Rhythm, because they are the home of impact picks and props, relative to live Major League Baseball. They have models for NBA and golf, picks that are so good it feels like cheating. You can also build your own model. It's very easy and simple to do. A reminder, they also have great deals for you. They have a discount for the monthly deal, for the annual deal. Monthly deal, 25% off with the promo code SGPN25, 50% off the annual deal with the promo code SGPN50. Once again, Rhythm, RATHM, promo code SGPN25 or SGPN50. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview for the round of 32. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. Skipped a couple matches. I'm going to go back to it now for the actual plays. I'm going to go with the Shelton and Mensik match, which should be very fun. I see a breaker or two minimum, but I do see a very close battle, and I am going to go with a team total. I'll go with Shelton team total over 12.5 at minus 125. Now, for the actual recent performances by Shelton, Shelton is once again he's been good on clay. We saw him make the final in Munich. We saw him come back against Navone, which you could argue is not the best performance, but Navone is good on clay. He also beat Perricard the round prior. So he was accustomed to seeing good servers, and Shelton was able to showcase some mental toughness as he was able to battle back and win. But I think he's been pretty good on clay. We know he's got the topspin forehand. We know the serve's very good. Mensik's a good server too. Has not played much clay recently, and you're looking at Shelton, who has gone over this team total in 4 of the last 6. So even in matches he tends to win, there's a breaker involved. You might see a 7-5, maybe a 3-setter. Couple ways to get there, but I think Shelton should win at least one set here. He's minus 210 to win a set. Mensik, I thought, was okay against Quinn. Not great. Quinn's not really known for being a good clay player, and Mensik went to a breaker, a competitive breaker in the first set. Then he figured it out and he was able to coast, but I do think that Shelton will be dangerous. He's been playing a lot more clay recently. We saw Mensik lose to Hanfman in a 3-setter in the tournament before this one. Point is, though, Mensik has not played much clay recently, and Shelton, I think, has been good on clay, surprisingly good. But you're looking at the tiebreaker for this match being around minus 200, so I'm expecting to see at least one breaker here. Shelton, though, has been on fire in tie breaks in the clay slate. He's won 6 straight tie breaks. So if you're looking at a breaker, I'll take the guy who's been rolling in breakers recently. I think it's a good spot for Shelton, so I'm going to break against Navone in this event as well. So I do like the overall script for Shelton to maybe have a breaker against Mensik, find a way to win it, but I do want to point out that each of the 2 meetings were marathons. They faced off twice, and both meetings were not decided in straight sets. They split them as well. I see a very close match. Couple ways to get the over here. Shelton wins a competitive set, and then Kos wins a competitive match in potentially 3 or loses in 3. But with the breaker expectation, you're looking at a spot where Shelton should end up going over this number anyway. I like the different paths to victory here. Give me Shelton team total over 12.5 as my lock of minus 125. For the dog, I'm going to go to a parlay, actually. I'm going to go with Draper money line with de Minaur to win the first set and the match against Chapo. And that pays out a plus 118 on FanDuel. I'm specifying FanDuel because I need a book that will grade retirements as winners if the guy drops out. Because Draper, I think, is in a great spot to get a pretty easy path into the round of 16. Berrettini, I said before, had an injury timeout against Giron, some gamesmanship involved, and coasted in the 3rd set. Truth is that Giron fell apart. Berrettini played well, but the first serve speed plummeted. He's clearly battling something. And we know Berrettini has injury issues in the past as well. Point is, though, Berrettini, I thought his serve did not look that great in the 3rd set. Draper looked very good against Griekspoor, who's very dangerous with his serve. So I think you're looking at Berrettini, who might try to play in this match. He might end up retiring midway through. Wouldn't shock me. There is a day off because this match is taking place on Monday. Point is, though, with the lack of first serve, I'd say, speed after the injury, I am very skeptical of how he's going to look against Draper. Draper is also 2-0 in the head-to-head. You're looking at a pretty underwhelming form for Berrettini, and Draper is a player that can be very dangerous because of the rally tolerance. If you're feeling some type of physical ailment, Draper will make sure that you feel it because he will extend the points. He will not self-destruct, and I see a really bad spot for Berrettini after having a nice 3rd set, but based on the speed of the serve and how he was moving, I think he's got problems. So I'll go with Draper money line in this one. I would have taken Draper in straight sets. Unfortunately, I think that the retirement could be a serious outcome for this one. So I'll go with the money line instead as what could be a solid parlay leg if you think Berrettini does have a decent chance of retiring. But either way, use it on FanDuel because they will grade out their retirements as wins if one full set's completed. As for de Minaur, he's been playing well. We know that he lost to Alcaraz and Musetti in the recent clay events. Two very good clay guys, but he's been dominant against other guys. De Minaur's also won 6 straight sets against Chapo. He's been great in the head-to-head recently. De Minaur's won the first set as well in 6 of his last 7 matches. One exception was Alcaraz. I can live with that. Point is, though, he's been a good starter. And we're looking at Chapo being a bad starter. Beat Nishikori in straight sets in the one match here. Nishikori, though, went to a third set against Vukic, who hasn't won in months. So not exactly a great form for Nishikori, and Chapo was able to win. Not going to read too much into it, though. Chapo's lost the first set in 3 of his last 4 matches. Has not been a good starter to matches, and I think de Minaur has. I think de Minaur should win. Probably in straight sets, but I'll play it safe. Give me the fast starter to beat the cold starter and the slow starter in the first set of the match as the second leg for the parlay. I think it was around minus 170, give or take, but I like the parlay as a combo. Yeah, that was going to happen eventually, that I hit the wrong button. Point is, though, you're looking at a spot where I do think that de Minaur is the better starter. I think that Chapo's been a pretty underwhelming player recently, and beating Nishikori doesn't change that for me. So give me the, once again, 2-pick parlay as my dog for this show. So once again, the plays here for the round of 32 in Madrid. The lock's going to be on Shelton, team total over 12.5 at minus 125. Hopefully, he wins a set. If he loses in 2 tie breaks, I'm going to be pissed. But I do think there's some value on it, and I do think that if Shelton wins a set, he should definitely go over this team total. So I'll go with that as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go with Draper moneyline parlayed with de Minaur to win the first set in the match at plus 118. That's going to wrap it up, though. We're back once again for the round of 16 here in Madrid in a couple days. Till then, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.